Well, welcome to you guys. Alright, so tonight I decided to try out, well, last week I tried out to do German ring turning. So basically the idea of it is you make a shape that hopefully turns out like an animal or some sort of character that you pre-planned out, and when you cut it out, it should pretty well be close to what you envisioned. So I tried to do a bear, and I showed it to my 5-year-old daughter, and she said it was a bear, so it's a bear. So it worked out. So it starts out basically just as a block, and then I turn it around, and then start turning the top, the bottom, and then take it off, and then cut into it. Normally the traditional way is you do it end grain. So like back in the 18th century when they did, or sorry, the end of the 18th century, early 19th century, they had like a special chuck that was just a sharpened metal piece all around, and they used to just hammer the log on so they could cut in end grain. I don't have that, and I tried doing a piece end grain just to see if I could even try it, and it flew off my lathe. So I ended up just getting a piece that we're doing cross grain. So hopefully it turns out again tonight. This one, pretty close to what I wanted. But yeah, I'll get started on it. Actually, before we do, the one thing I do is I make a template first before I start. So yeah, try to come up with something. So I took a picture off the internet of a bear, just like a silhouette of it walking, and then I kind of just drew it by hand onto a piece of paper, and then transferred that to a piece of wood, and then cut it out with a bandsaw. And then after I cut it out with the bandsaw, I cut it from the point where I thought it'd be easiest to get access to before it starts getting a little bit dangerous on the lathe, just for like the inside part, and just the easiest part on the tip of the face, just so that when you're using it to kind of see if you're close to your design, you can kind of get it on there easy enough. So that's what I did with this. And then, yeah, basically just find center on your piece, and you start going at it. Yeah, we don't have the spur center, so. And so what I'm doing first here is I'm not actually like on the chuck right now. I'm just going to cut a groove in so that I can actually fit it onto the chuck. So I'm just going to mark out from center. It's about 15/16, and then I'll cut out about 5/16 into here, and then just basically have a groove so I can fit on there to clamp. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side, so it's ready to flip the piece. So with any luck, I didn't mess that up. I'm going to start laying this out. Basically, I'm going to try to get the nose of the bear pretty close to the edge, just because I want to give myself enough room that I can cut in underneath the tail at the back, and then not get too close to the chuck on the backside. I'm just using a round carbide bit. If you want to see. So I got this set off Amazon for, I think it was 150 bucks. Came with 4 bits, works pretty awesome. I don't usually use carbide very often, but for more detailed stuff like this, where kind of got into tighter grooves, I don't have a lot of different chisels and gouges, so this works good for that stuff, right? But yeah, I mean, for what they work pretty decent. This is kind of the slow part of the process of just trying to figure out if it's close to your regular dimensions. It looks pretty close. I might just take a little bit more off the back here and try not to take off too much just because that's where the tail is. And I kind of got to scoop in underneath that and then go down through the leg. So.
Kind of wood is that?
What's that?
What kind of wood is that?
This is just a chunk of maple. Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to do it out of a piece of poplar from my yard and
How many RPM are you running?
because it says what, 2400 RPM? At home I do about 3200. So I don't know if you can see on the screen, it's not exactly the shape but it's pretty close. I could keep going, but just for the sake of time, we'll just say that's good.
I don't know. A little bit old. If it looks like a giraffe when you're done, then.
Get the wood split.
I think you lost your audio.
Is that better?
Yeah.
So the bottom side is a bit of a guessing game. You assume that I try to get the tip of the bear head as close to the edge here, just so that you're not kind of trying to figure out where everything lands up. So my guess is it's probably, like for the feet, they're probably going to start somewhere about 3/8 of an inch in. So roughly about there. And the back is going to end up roughly about there, if everything turns out right. Thank you so much.
Did you drill a hole through the waist part closer to center?
Yes.
You have a reference point there.
Yeah, you probably could, eh?
Go straight through it. As long as you're drilling in a 90-degree angle.
Yeah, as long as everything's straight. Yeah, you try that on the next one.
To drill where through this.
The other thing is the overall dimension. The blocks I got were just pre-cut ones, so I didn't really have a choice in how big they were. But I'm going to have to cut off quite a bit of this. So I'm just going to cut straight in and then out and then kind of go from there. So for the legs, it's really hard to get into all those grooves, especially like the one in between the front and back legs. Obviously just the shape of that, trying to get in there on the lathe, it's going to be really hard to do, especially with the limited tools I have with me. So what I do is I get pretty close to that. I might just do little grooves in, and then I just finish it off on the bandsaw when I cut out the pieces. So I'll start cutting this one in, and try to eliminate as much of the waste as I can, and try to stick the face looking like an actual face, and then go from there.
Is that one of our new lights? Nice.
Not sure exactly if it's the same, but it looks pretty close, so we go with that. go a little bit slower here just so I don't have it fly off. The other one I did at 1400 RPMs, I wouldn't recommend doing that. So, that's pretty well what I want to do. The face is kind of a little wonky here, that's okay, it is what it is. But the legs you can carve out with a bandsaw or jigsaw, whatever you have. Coping saw works really good too. And then use a Dremel for doing any detail work in that too. And traditional way of doing this, like I said, is they took basically a knife and they just hammered into it and they split the wood. And that's how I got the toys out of it. Because this is cross grain, that doesn't really work super well, so bandsaw is probably your best bet. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
How's that?
Good. Can you hear me? There we go. Okay, this is a segmented turning made of bird's eye maple, walnut, budwood, and a little bit of yellowheart. Design, I got the idea out of a Dale Nish book. Then I wanted to, I built my own contour type thing and drew a plan for it and put it all together. I finished it with Odie's. I did struggle with the top piece there. I originally did it with a finial and I hated it. So I cut it off and ended up coming up with this design.
I think you made the right choice.
Yeah, thank you. I was asked by quite a few folks out there, well, it's obviously, well, not obviously, it's an urn. You can hold it. The screws are made of brass. I got those from a place called Niles Bottle Stoppers, which is, I believe, owned by Carl Jacobson, and if anybody is familiar with some of the guys on YouTube.
Very cool.
So yeah, that's about it. Anybody questions or?
Was that size specific?
Yeah, there's a formula. Kind of got to know how much the person weighs. And it translates 1 pound to 1
cubic inch per pound.
That's right. Yeah.
On live weight.
Yeah.
That's actually more.
So that's good for about 160. I tested it with about a big bag of rice because I wasn't sure if my calculations were right. So
How long did that take?
about 3 months, but I did a couple other projects in the meantime. Yeah. Yeah. Probably about 3 weeks. Up here is a little thinner, but yeah, the rest of it's about 3/8, probably ½ inch on the bottom.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. So I brought 2 pieces in tonight, but before I do that, I wanted to share a story. I was telling Ken last meeting that I'm looking to to get insurance so I can teach classes in my studio. So I talked to my insurance company, and I spent about an hour on the phone with the broker, and he was asking me about everything that I would be doing in my shop, and I happened to mention that I had a wood burner, and he didn't say anything at the time, and he got back to me, and about 3 days later, an email. He said, "I talked to Wawanisa, and they say if you have any loss, if they find your wood burner in there, you have no insurance." So I just wanted to throw that out there. If anybody's got wood burners in their shops, you maybe just the pen, just these razor tip pens out of Martinville. Yeah. If you apply heat to wood in any way, Wawanisa won't cover you. So yeah, no, just check with your insurance. So yeah, since then I have switched. Well, I have my shop in behind a 2-car garage. So my house and shop and garage is all under one package. Right? It's not a separate insurance, but yeah. So it's just that was kind of an eye opener for me because I'd been with that company for like 35 years. So, but
Or don't check with your insurance company.
yeah, right, and it'd be out of luck.
What they don't know won't hurt them.
So as wood turners, we're always told to do a concave base in the bottom of our bowl so they don't wobble. And I just had a chunk here, and I thought, well, I'm just going to see what that. Yeah, and it actually it does. Yeah, it does for whatever reason. So I just thought, it worked, but so that was that. The last one. A few years ago, I took a course down in Calgary with Jimmy Clues, and just the reason I brought this little through is he was talking about doing an OG curve, and there was many times when I was doing, and not saying that this one's perfect by any means, but he kind of cleared it up for me really well. The way he explained it is whatever angle you have on the top, if you have that same angle on the bottom, and then just split it in the middle with your transition curve, he says you're going to get a nice OG curve. But if you have these at different angles, it's just going to look either bottom heavy or top heavy. So I just brought that in just to as a reminder for myself that keep this angle, the top angle, and the bottom angle the same, and they'll work out. So that was the only reason I brought those in. But that's it. Who's up?
So I got a 4-foot stump off Facebook, and Terry Skinberg helped me with his chainsaw, and I've got 4 pieces out of it already, and I haven't even got to the burl yet. It is just an amazing piece. Now, Stu, you said that's going to lose color last
Yes,
month.
it is.
Even with Varathane or
Oh, yeah.
top of it? Yeah, that won't do it. No.
Over time, it will fade.
Yeah, it'll take a couple of years.
Keep it in the dark.
like my wife.
Someday it will make it fade, yes.
Yeah.
Keep it out of the coffee windows and stuff like that, it'll last much longer.
Okay, good. No, it's been fun.
There's some of it, it's about 10 years ago, it's still not salted to the point of flaky.
I hate to lose it.
Yeah, that's a beautiful piece.
Okay, as you know, I like to play with epoxy, so I figured why not put epoxy in a bowl? So, and a segmented bowl. So I made a feature ring with the epoxy and the, I think it's a African walnut, the wood in there, African mahogany, the wood that was in there, and set it up in a bowl with a insert on the inside so that it wouldn't fill the whole thing. Poured my epoxy, and then all my boards shifted, as you can see. So that's one thing I didn't learn yet. Yeah. So then you take the ring, and it still had the wood insert in the center. You're able to smooth one end up, one end that's going to go on your segmented vessel, and then you just make it like a regular one. Same with the base. I cast a base, and then you find a way to center it and smooth one edge, and then that's your base in the bottom. So. More epoxy. Yeah, epoxy to epoxy, or epoxy to wood, and then all the rest of the joints are just glue joints.
That was in 4 segments that you did.
Yeah, one here, 2, 3 epoxy joints here. Yeah, so. Yeah, any other questions? Oh, I'm still very upset with finishes. Minwax has changed their formula, I think, and so I tried a bit of Minwax and it was dull as hell. So then I used a Varathane finish for the last coat, and you can see there's little runs on it and things like that. So I'm still looking for a better finish, some kind of urethane finish that I can use.
Did you spray or?
No, brush it on. Yeah. Yeah, I've used lacquer, but it's I think you get more depth if you get an oil-based sort of finish that soaks into the wood. I used to use 3 coats of the Minwax, and I was really happy with the finish. Now it just doesn't work like that. They got a fast-drying Minwax or something or other replaced the one I used to use. So anyway. Okay.
Well, I figured I would try doing some segmented stuff. So my daughter, I made her a yarn mold at one time, and her kids used it as a football. And she'd give it to me, this broken mold, and said, "Can you fix it?" And I said, "Well, I don't think so." So I figured I'd make this one, and I'm going to tell her when I give it to her that if the kids use this for football, they'll break something, but it won't be the ball. So I left it quite thick. And I didn't put the groove in it, I just did the 3 holes. My design department, who happens to be my wife, said you can do that, and she showed me all kinds of pictures of yarn bowls like that, and then I made her a lid for it, so she can keep the yarn in there. And use my laser pecker to say Merry Christmas in the back of it. So I did that one. That was 12-piece segments, and I thought, well, that wasn't too hard. Let's try 24-piece. So I went and got some black walnut, and it still had the sap. Some of the wood still had the sapwood around the side, and it actually made kind of a neat little pattern. So I put that in, and I ran out here, but it was all black walnut, except for the top and the very bottom, which was just regular walnut. And I made that for my design department, so I gave it to her for her 52nd anniversary. If I ever get to catch up, then I'll be with it. So.
Hi. Okay, sure. Sorry. So I had some olive wood that I bought last year, and I figured that I could make a rolling pin out of it. So I made 2 blanks. This one is 1.5 inches diameter because I had a hard time with some sapwood that came out of it. And the other one, it was a gift, so it was a bit bigger, 1.75 inches. So it's a French rolling pin.
Very nice.
The finish is beeswax and oil. It's a small mallet there for carving. It's maple and walnut. It's about 10 inches long. I didn't weigh this one. I made another one. It's a little bit bigger. It's just at 15 ounces. So this one should be around 10, 11 ounces.
Do you put any lead or anything you weight inside it? Or?
No, I didn't. It's just so it's just easy for the small carvings. And I have a larger one, a mallet, and that was too big. And this one I find is a good size.
Very nice.
Does your wife see that still show up?
No.
Very good.
Hi. Yeah, I just started playing with epoxy a few years ago, and it's mainly because trying to find good wood and interesting wood is either hard to find or crazy expensive. Then I started just gluing boards together with epoxy, started turning, and one thing led to the next, and then it was just the rattiest piece of wood you could find if you mixed it with the epoxy and then turned it. Get very, very interesting shape. This was originally just a knobbly piece of, I don't know what to call it. I mean, it looked like a wart or something. I believe it's maple, but I'm not 100% sure. And then once I started with epoxy and the colors, and then I started pouring it with, like this particular one here, took a wasp nest and I filled the individual cells with different colors, then put it into the pot, add the epoxy into it. But epoxy is expensive. So I started out by putting this in that big pot, putting it all together, then I thought, enough of that. So then I started turning this in 2 spots because this particular piece I could just use one of the small measuring cups to make that part of it. And this was wood that went into a different measuring cup of the right size, joined together the 2 pieces. Then I could turn it. And then to get a good finish on it afterwards, did a flood coat of epoxy. The trick is you got to get it slow enough that it doesn't come flying all over the place.
Yeah.
And I just happened to be lucky enough to have an old lathe that I could put an old power feed onto. And between the combo of the two, I found a way to slow it down. And then it's kind of like a drug. Once you do one, you think, oh, I wonder what the next one's going to be. I wonder what that's going to be. I wonder about this color. And it's just like, where does it end? But, oh well, could be worse. Well, I'll just pass this around and then everyone wants to look at it can go for it.
And how did you hold that in the lathe? Did you have a tenon on the end? Or?
Actually, on that particular one, because I was making a bunch of them, what I did is I made some small rings. I'd seen someone else do it and then drilled a 1-inch hole and then tapped it. Then I just glued it onto that so I could just thread that piece onto the lathe, do my thing, set it aside, stick another one, thread it onto the lathe. Didn't need a whole pile of chucks that way.
Yeah.
It works good with small stuff, but once you get bigger, that piece of wood wants to fly apart really easy, especially if you're using plywoods, because not every piece of plywood is glued together properly. I have a few things that float across the shop, but whatever, this is all part of the fun, I guess.
So do you stick them together with epoxy or?
Yeah, and that particular one, like for instance, I'll take the one piece, turn it down the drill press, and then use a 1.75" or a 2-inch, what do you call them, Forstner bits, the flat ones. Drill that in to start with. Then I turn the other one just this right diameter, and then put it together. And then I just use 5-minute epoxy because I just wanted to get it done quick. And you know, like half hour later, you can start turning the piece.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah,
Awesome.
that's been fun.
That is
I'm the shopsmith guy. And last time I was here, last week, Bert gave away some wood, and he said, bring it back. So I brought it back. I showed it to Bert. Make it bigger. My kids decided they were learning Christmas ornaments. So this is just pallet wood, and they're going to be 3 different sizes for 5 different kids. There's a lot of them. And this one, my neighbor had a pear wood log. Because the shopsmith is flexible on one end, this thing doesn't want to stay in there. And it just, even though I have a Talon chuck, one-way Talon chuck, it popped right out. So, and because of the fact that this is loose, if there's a knot in it, man, does it catch. And that's it.
I see a lathe in your future.
I see a lathe in my future too.
Okay, I'll try not to mumble, because I usually don't speak loudly enough and nobody can hear me anyways. Okay, so I made a couple of little bowls. This first one is jack pine. What I really need is larger legs. It's a tiny bit small. Yeah, I know, I'm gonna work something bigger than this, but okay, I'm getting better. I did the bottom this time. For those of you who saw that last time, I had a lovely bowl. And I need to do a jam chuck now and fix the bottom because I didn't do it in the first time around. So this time I'm learning. Did it the first time around. I just sanded this up. I do, I think, 150, 340, and I'm done. I don't do a lot of sanding because I'm just not up for that. So, and this one is a piece of, oh, that was jack pine. This is mountain ash, and John Warner, who isn't, I don't think, here tonight, he was the one that, I don't think he cut the tree down, but he volunteered. I think Ken got some, and Gail, did you get some? No, a few people got some. And so this is I cut it in half, and I don't know that that was a good idea. But, so another bowl, a little bit bigger, mountain ash, and again, finished the bottom. And the finish is Osmo.
Very good.
Next. I also got some wood last month, and I was to make some. So, bought her house was from Bert, and I just had a piece of hardwood floor. I don't know what kind it is, Bert, but that's the top. I did finish the bottom with a little tool. It's not easy to see, of course, because I didn't highlight it in a different color, but if you did look at the bottom, you can see that I put a pattern on it with a patterning tool that Bert made for me. Why, it's like I don't have anything that Bert hasn't given me, so so that ended up on the Christmas tree.
Good job.
This is my first effort at epoxy and wood, and I enjoy it. I like the look of it, but it's a lot different than turning wood. And yeah, I use some Boxhauser burl and some glue in the epoxy. Yeah.
Very nice.
So, in keeping with everybody's epoxy theme, and like somebody else said, epoxy's expensive. So this is ponderosa pine cones embedded in here. And what I do is I cut those in half and I use a piece of spruce or something that I poke in the middle. So I'm not wasting all that epoxy. And that way it gives you something to hot melt glue the pine cones to so they don't want to float out. And then it's just a little piece of Manitoba maple burl on the bottom. I think that's the sour cream container was the mold.
What'd you finish with?
Okay.
What's the finish?
General finish is sellable finish on the outside, and then just epoxy flood coat on the inside.
How thick was the epoxy when you poured it in?
Maybe this thick all around, because I put a piece of spruce inside to take up that. Yeah.
How much do you think the epoxy cost for that?
Half a liter?
Yeah, maybe half a liter.
20 bucks.
Yeah,
15.
half, 3/4 of a liter, so under 20 bucks. I think, well,
It's about 30 bucks.
this was, I think this was the tail end of the epoxy that I got, what, 4 years ago?
See how long it lasts?
Well,
Surprising, isn't it?
And does that go into a pressure pot?
vacuum chamber and pressure pot. When especially if you're using like stuff like pine cones, it's a lot of surface, and you can see some places they'll trap. That's where you need the vacuum chamber. Because even with the pressure pot, you get lots of air trapped, and it'll shrink them down. But,
So why both?
because the vacuum chamber will take all the air out, and then if there is any real small bubbles, the pressure pot will collapse those down. So like you can look at it, and you like with the pine cone, if all they did was a pressure pot, there's really a high probability that there would be air pockets in around the pine cone.
So you put it in
the vacuum chamber.
for a period of time?
Once I get it up to full vacuum, which in my case is usually about 25 inches of mercury. Yeah, like I say, half hour, 45 minutes, you know.
And then you switch it to the other one?
Yep, then I take it out, put it in the pressure pot, and it's long cure. It's 72 hours for this to even get reasonably hard. 48 hours is closer to full cure.
What grade do you sand the epoxy to?
Sorry?
What grade do you sand the epoxy to?
This year I go up to 800.
Do you wet sand with it, or?
I haven't been. No. And
Put a tea light in that, how does it look?
I don't know.
Put your flashlight on your phone.
Yeah. Put your light in, it'll shine through. This one, I use my laser to do the engraving on the inside, and the engraving is fairly deep. It's almost 1/8 of an inch deep, and then I filled this with epoxy. Okay, so I turned the bowl first, and because the laser likes everything to be basically the same height. You can have some variations, but not much, because otherwise you get out of focus and it doesn't. So you got to have a fairly flat bottom. So like these dish kind of things work great for that. And then pour the epoxy in. Once it's cured, put it back on the lathe. This one here, able to put on a chuck, but I have a vacuum chuck as well, so it's not a big deal to stick this on the vacuum and then return the inside, sand it, and finish it.
Just to even out the epoxy?
Sorry? Yeah, because if you want to overfill your epoxy because it will absorb into the wood. Right? So what I do too is on something like that, I'll do a spray coat of lacquer or polyurethane just to seal the wood, so it doesn't bleed into the grain. Because if you don't seal it on the edges, is a good, especially if you go in with the grain, the epoxy will leach into that and then it'll show up and there's nothing you can do about it. But if you seal the wood, it seals it and then the epoxy won't migrate. And most of you folks here know that I do have a CNC. So that's what, I don't have the patience to hand carve this kind of stuff. So what I did with this was I did a rough machining on just this edge. Poured the epoxy. After it cured, I put it back on the CNC and did I was going to do another cut to get a smoother finish, but I decided that I kind of like the look of the roughness, made it look more like a rope, so I left it. And then I just put it on the lathe and did the rest of the turning.
Nice. Walnut?
Walnut, and this has general finishes, same as that other bowl, general finish, bowl finish. About, I think about 3 coats. Oh yeah, first challenge here, Linda. Come on, Jerry.
No, it was suggested these were more of a stress relief, so I'm going to go with that. But yeah, no, this was more wood that Bert handed out, and they come from Steve from the some of the cut-offs that he was doing with walnut and epoxy. So Bert just threw these 2 cut-off pieces that were just kind of rough triangles and said, here, make a couple of eggs. So that's what I did. So, and I'm just going to send those with Stu so he can give them to Bert. That was his challenge.